want to talk to you about a crochet fundamental, particularly for toys, that can really throw people off their game. I know several people who've been crocheting for years and haven't yet dived into crocheting toys because they are so intimidated by magic circles, and it's understandable. When you're not familiar with them, they can seem a lot, and sometimes you can have a try with them and feel like it's not something you're capable of doing, but actually it's just because you've not got the right tools or you're not following the easiest instructions. Today I'm going to share my absolute favourite way of making magic circles. I'm going to break it down into steps for you, but mostly what I want to do is share my main do's and don'ts for making magic circles for beginners to help you stay on the right track, practice it in the way that's going to be the most helpful for you, and then hopefully you'll be flying along making some amazing amigurumi toys in no time at all. This is designed for beginners to magic circles, but if you are already confidently magic circling but occasionally get a bit stuck and find them a bit tricky and you're not sure why, this might be helpful for you too. Practice with a cotton blend yarn. There are loads of yarns available, obviously. They all have different strengths and properties, but for me, I think a cotton blend is the perfect one to start with when you're practicing magic circles. It has got a tiny bit of stretch, but not too much, and it's unlikely to fray or shred. Basically, big fan of cotton yarn for practicing magic circles. Use a brightly coloured yarn. The darker the yarn, the harder it is to see your stitches. If you're doing something for the first time, use a brightly coloured yarn or one that contrasts with your lap or the desk where you're going to be working on. So make sure that it is as easy to see as possible. In the same vein, make sure you're in a well-lit place. Having good lighting makes all the difference when you're practicing. Everything basically to enhance your visual experience of doing it as much as you possibly can. Use an oversized hook, so make sure it is at least 1 millimeter, maybe even 1.5 millimeters thicker than the one that is described on your yarn packet. So if your cotton blend yarn says on it, use a 4 millimeter hook with this, when you're practicing, use a 5.5 millimeter hook. What that will do is simply give you bigger gaps. It might make your magic circle not look quite as neat and together, but whilst you're practicing, this is your best way to see exactly what you're doing, particularly during those first few goes. Begin with a thick weight yarn. Aran, ideally, for me, is the best weight of yarn to practice this with, or a chunky or worsted weight yarn if you don't have an Aran weight yarn lying around. Break the process down into steps. So let's have a look here. So what I do is I tend to break it into stages, and my first stage is putting my yarn into my hand. So I turn my hand palm up, I place the yarn over the top, I separate my fingers so that the middle two are together, I wrap the yarn around them twice, and I bring the end over so that it pinches between my thumb and my first finger. What I do then when I'm helping someone with magic circles for the first time is I get them to unwrap it and make the same thing again. Getting used to that motion, because it's a slightly unusual motion. Each step that you make builds your confidence and it makes it more likely that the next step is going to be good. Also, when we're learning, if you get too much information at once, it can make your brain feel really frazzled, particularly when you're doing something that you've not done that often or you're not going to do that regularly. I highly recommend this, breaking it down into individual stages. So this is a good time for us to go through the full process of making the magic circle. So as we've just seen, the first one is we're going to lay our hand out and we're going to separate our fingers, yarn over, wrap round twice and pinch. You're then going to take your crochet hook, put it through those 2 middle rings, pick up the yarn, pull it through, pick up the yarn again and pull it through again. You can now make the number of stitches into your magic circle that the pattern says that you need. So in this example, I'm going to make a magic circle of 6 stitches. Hook through the middle, pick up the yarn, pull it through, pick up the yarn and pull it through. So that's 1 single crochet into the circle. And we're going to make 5 more. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and now we are going to tighten our circle, and then you're going to pull it closed by pinching the end of the line of stitches, taking the ring that is the furthest away from you and gently pulling it out, and then taking the tail and gently pulling that through as well, and that will make your closed circle. Close the circle slowly. Don't yank, don't pull too hard. It is a slow, gradual motion for those tightening parts. You'll find that the more more gently that you can close it, the more successful you're likely to be, and you don't want it to be overly tightened. It should be closed in the middle, but it shouldn't be pulled so much that you feel like you're straining against the yarn. And do remember to try a different method if this one doesn't work for you. Personally, I think that for almost everybody, this is the easiest method of doing it, but there are several others available. Look up other people's YouTube videos and run through some of those if mine doesn't work for you. Let's have a quick look at some don'ts, because there are some mistakes that get made a lot when people are beginning to make magic circles, and it's good to avoid them. Don't use plush yarn or novelty yarn when you're beginning to learn how to make them. Plush yarn has this wonderful thick fluffy texture, but the reality is that the fluff is created by fine fibres that stick out all the way around the edge of the strand, and what is inside is a strand that is only comparable to fishing wire or a small piece of cotton. It's a tiny strand inside. So what happens is when you're making your magic circle, it's much more likely to get knotted and far too tight. You will often find as well that people strip the fluff off the chenille or plush yarn too. Just don't use that to begin with. Honestly, go with the cotton blend if you can. If not, then an acrylic is your next best bet. Don't strain, tug or pull too hard at any part of the process. It should be a relaxed motion and not a tense motion, because what you want is for the strands of yarn to slide over each other as you make them. And at any point, if you're pulling too hard, you're just setting yourself up for it to be a much more difficult process. Don't keep trying if you feel cross. If you are finding yourself getting wound up by the process, you're thinking this doesn't work, I don't like it, just pause, put it down and walk away, and then go back to just stage by stage and step by step. Don't keep trying to work when you feel yourself getting frustrated, because when we're frustrated we tense up and we cannot think as clearly as when we're calm. There is no harm to setting your stuff to the side and coming back to it later. But finally, and probably the most importantly, don't give up entirely. This is something that you can and will be able to achieve. It feels so frustrating when something feels like it should be obvious, or it's such a fundamental part of a thing and you can't get your head around it. But honestly, magic circles is the thing that people complain about the most to me, and ask me probably about the most as well. This is a really common area to find difficult, even if you've been crocheting other things for a really long time. So don't let it get you frustrated or upset. It is absolutely fine. Slow and steady, step by step. Find a video that works well for you on YouTube, pause at different stages, repeat the stages, and you will get there, and you will be making amazing, beautiful toys with closed circles at the top of them really soon. But what about you? What are your tips? What do you think is the best way to make a magic circle? Do you have a different preferred method? Did I miss something that you think is really important for getting it right? Let me know and let's chat in the comments section below, and I can't wait to see you there.